My name is Daniel Carter. I am 62 years old. I used to think I had failed at everything. For many years, I believed I would never belong anywhere. I stand in front of a tall glass building every autumn. The windows reflect the sky. People walk past me in clean suits. They do not know that I once slept behind this same building, hungry and afraid. I had no papers, no money, no name in any official record. I thought my story had already ended before it truly began. Deep down, I could not even look up. I felt I had fallen so low that I could never stand up again. If you lost everything in one day, what would you do? Would you try again, or would you quit? I used to think the city hated me, that it pushed me aside on purpose. But in the end, it was not hate. It was indifference. And that hurt even more. It took me decades to understand it. And today, here at Peak, I want to tell you why. In 1985, I left my small village with $200 in my pocket. There was no phone in our house, no big road, no real future. I told myself I would start from nothing and build a life in the city. I believed hard work was enough. As long as I worked harder than everyone else, I thought I would earn a living and make ends meet. At first, everything felt possible. The buildings were tall, the streets were loud. I looked up at the buildings and had to lift my chin just to see the top. Still, I tightened my grip on my bag and kept walking. I told myself I would prove myself step by step. But the city did not care who I was. The subway smelled like metal and old water. The walls were covered in graffiti. People stood shoulder to shoulder, yet no one looked at me. I was there, but I did not belong. I held the pole with one hand and my bag with the other. The train was crowded. A man next to me said, "Watch your bag." I nodded, but I did not understand. I thought he was only being polite. When the train stopped, people pushed toward the door. I stepped out with them. I reached into my pocket. Empty. I touched it again. Then again. I checked my bag. My heart started pounding in my ears. I pressed my hand against my pocket again, hoping I had made a mistake. The money was gone. Almost everything I had was gone. I stood on the platform staring at the tracks. I had dreams, but I had no protection. I had strength, but no identity. In that moment, I realized how easy it was to be pushed aside. That was the first day I disappeared. I slept at the station because I had nowhere else to go. The floor was cold. My bag was my pillow. I tried to look invisible. One night, a guard pushed me with his shoe. "No sleeping here," he said. I stood up at once. I picked up my bag and walked outside without saying a word. My face felt hot, but I kept my head down. Then I saw Miguel again. He smiled like nothing had changed. "Trust me," he said. "We're in this together." I wanted to believe him because I did not want to be alone. He told me about a job. He said I would get paid the same day. Even though something felt wrong, I had no choice but to listen. I gave him the little money I had left for registration. It was almost everything. He disappeared. I waited near the corner where he told me to stand. I waited until the light faded. I waited until the street became quiet. Cars passed. People walked by. He never came back. I stood there with nothing left. For a moment, I wanted to quit. I felt like I had hit rock bottom. I learned the hard way who was brother and who was not. A few days later, I found work at the market. It was 3 a.m. The air was cold. The ground was wet. I carried boxes. I cleaned trucks. I moved fast because I was under pressure. They paid me in cash at the end of the shift. The money was small, but it was mine. I bought a simple meal: bread, soup, water. I sat on the curb and ate slowly. The steam from the soup warmed my face. Maybe it will be okay, I told myself. Maybe I can survive. For the first time in days, I felt a small sense of control. I saved a little money. Not much. Just enough to try something on my own. I bought bruised peaches. the cheap ones nobody wanted. I washed them. I cut the dark parts. I tried to earn respect by working carefully. I sold them for less than the other sellers. A man next to me looked at my crate. "You are killing my price," he said. His voice was calm, but his eyes were not. I lowered my eyes and said nothing. I made less than I expected. Some fruit did not sell. At the end of the day, I counted my coins again and again. I had nothing left to lose, but I still had to cover my costs. That night, I took care of the peaches that were left. I cut away the dark spots. I placed the good pieces in a small box. I ate one quietly. The juice ran down my fingers. I wiped the sticky juice from my fingers onto my worn-out shirt. It was the only sweet thing I had tasted all day. I sat there in silence and listened to the trucks moving in the distance. One morning, I saw men in uniform entering the market. The air changed. Voices became lower. Movements became slower. I did not know it then, but that was the moment everything began to shift. One morning, a small inspection began at the market. It started quietly, but everyone felt it. Vendors stopped talking. Movements became slower. Even though the sun was already up, the air felt cold. Two men in uniform walked straight toward our row. One of them stopped near my crate. I lowered my head and tried to look busy. Then they took someone away. It was a loader I knew. We had shared coffee the week before. He did not argue. He did not beg. He just lowered his head and followed them. His hands were empty. His shoulders looked smaller than usual. Something tightened in my chest. I moved quickly and hid behind a truck. My hands were shaking. I held my breath so hard my chest hurt. A guard turned his head. For 1 second, his eyes stopped on me. I felt my heart hit my ribs. I did not move. I did not speak. After a moment, he looked away. I was not caught, but I was not safe. I stayed there, frozen. When the men in uniform left, my breath came back slowly. My shirt was wet with sweat. I wiped my face with my sleeve. That was the moment I faced reality. Survival was not enough. Then I saw him. An old homeless man stood near the gate. His coat was thin. His beard was gray. They took him gently, almost quietly. No one protested. No one asked his name. He looked like me, only 20 winters older. He did not fight. He simply disappeared into the crowd. "That could be me," I whispered. "I can work hard, but I can still disappear." Have you ever felt like you could vanish without anyone noticing? I stood frozen, unable to move. If I wanted to belong, I had to exist in the system. What kind of life was this? After that inspection, I could not sleep. The image of the old man stayed in my mind. I faced the truth. If I continued like this, I would disappear sooner or later. Even though I was afraid of going back, I had no choice but to fix my foundation, so I returned to my village. The bus ride felt longer than before. I looked out the window and said nothing. When I arrived, everything looked smaller. The houses, the road, even my own shadow. I walked into the government office with slow steps. My hands were cold. Inside, the air smelled like old paper and dust. People stood in long lines. No one smiled. When it was my turn, the clerk did not look at me. He kept his eyes on the desk. "Fill this form again," he said. Then he added, "Next." His voice was flat. I stepped aside. I filled out forms again and again. I waited in long lines. For weeks, I returned to that office. The cheap ink stained my fingers black. Every night, I washed my hands. The dark color did not disappear. It stayed under my nails, like proof that I was fighting for something. Piece by piece, I rebuilt what I had lost. Some days I felt humiliated. Some days I wanted to walk away. But deep down, I knew this was my turning point. I waited weeks for the official stamp. When the paper finally lay in front of me, I placed my hands on the wooden desk. They were shaking, but steady. "I want my name back," I said quietly. I took a deep breath. I did not cry. I did not complain. I simply stood there, holding my new record in my hands. For the first time, I felt I could finally restore my identity. This time, I would not run. When I returned to the city, the market looked the same. The noise, the smell of fruit, the wet ground under my shoes. But my corner was no longer mine. Another seller stood there. He arranged his crates slowly, like he had always belonged there. When he saw me, he smiled slightly. Not cruel, just certain. He looked at me and said, "You left. This is how markets work." His voice was calm, almost polite. Before I could answer, the inspectors entered again. The air changed at once. People lowered their voices. I felt my heart beating against my ribs, but I did not step back. This time, I refused to disappear. I stood my ground. One inspector stopped in front of me. He looked at my permit. "Your permit says this year. Where were you registered last year?" he asked. There was a pause. I heard someone whisper behind me, "He's done." My fingers felt cold, but I held the papers steady. "I restored my identity," I said. My voice was quiet, but firm. He checked the documents. The seconds felt heavy. I could hear my own breathing. Finally, he gave a small nod. Approval. The other seller's smile faded. His jaw tightened for a moment. He looked at my papers, then looked away. He did not argue. He did not back down loudly. He simply stepped half a step aside. After the inspector left, the noise slowly returned. The crowd moved on. I stayed still for a moment, feeling the paper in my hand. My shoulders dropped. My breath came out slowly. The other seller remained for a second. He looked at my permit, then at me. He gave a short nod and lifted his crate. No words were needed. There was space for me again. This was not victory by anger. This was justice through proof. There was no celebration, no applause. The market noise slowly returned, as if nothing had happened. I set my crate down slowly, making sure my hands were steady. I breathed in. The air still smelled like fruit and wet wood. I touched my permit again, just to feel the paper between my fingers. It was real. It had my name. My registered name. A truck driver who had watched everything gave me a small nod. He did not smile widely. He just nodded. Once. That was enough. As he passed by, a loader said quietly, "Good for you, Daniel." He said my name. In the open market. Not in a whisper. Not in secret. For the first time, my shoulders dropped, and I could breathe without looking over my shoulder. For the first time, I was not afraid of being pushed aside. I no longer stood on the edge of running away. I remained still, calm on the outside, holding my head a little higher. But fear does not disappear in one day. It fades slowly. Even though I had my papers, I knew I still had to keep things running. I still had to earn respect step by step. That moment was not the end. It was only the beginning. 2 or 3 years later, I had a legal corner in the market. I did not hide anymore. I stood in the open. I paid my fees. I showed my permit when they asked. But I still lived close to the edge. One bad week could break me. I worked every morning. Every season, nothing was dramatic. I just carried boxes, checked fruit, and tried to make ends meet. I was not rich. I was only stable. The seasons changed over my small corner. Summer peaches became autumn apples, then winter potatoes. My hands grew rougher. My face grew leaner. I was no longer the boy who arrived with $200. I was a man who understood the rhythm of the city. Even though I felt stronger, I knew understanding was not the same as being safe. By my late 20s, I understood the market better. I had some savings. I dared to buy more. Deep down, I felt confident. I thought I had learned everything. Then the season changed again. "Too much supply this year," a driver said to me. "Be careful." I nodded, but I took the risk. I bought too much. The price crashed. Crates remained unsold. Fruit turned soft overnight. I lost money fast. I counted the cash in my hand again and again. It was not enough. My hands started to shake again. I was barely holding things together. I was on the verge of losing everything again. That night, I sat alone on the floor of my small room, bills in one hand, coins in the other. I held my breath and tried to stay calm. If I gave up, I would lose more than money. I sat there for a long time. No speech, no excuses. The harder I worked, the more I understood risk. This time, survival was not the problem. Control was. I decided to change. I moved from random buying to controlled supply. I built trust with drivers. I learned to control the risk little by little. I earned respect again, piece by piece. There was no sudden wealth, only steady growth. Years passed. Decades went by quietly. I kept working in that same corner, season after season, step by step. I used to sell bruised peaches. People looked at the dark spots and turned away. They saw damage. They saw something cheap, but I saw the good part inside. I washed them. I cut away the bad pieces. I kept what still had value. Life does the same thing to us. It leaves marks. It lets others reject us. It makes us feel invisible. But a bruise does not mean the fruit is worthless. I almost walked away. There were nights when I felt empty inside. There were mornings when I did not want to stand up again. I was on the edge of giving up. I thought my story had already ended. I am glad I did not quit. You are not worthless just because the world rejects you. Dignity only becomes real when it is tested. It grows under pressure. It grows when you choose to stand your ground. I am not proud of being rich. I am proud of having a name. You may feel like everything you try ends in failure. Maybe you failed once, and you already want to quit. After one setback, you feel tired. After two, you start to doubt yourself. You may think it is a sign that you are not good enough. But one fall does not mean you are meant to disappear. This story is not only about Daniel. It may also be about you. Identity matters more than income. You can earn money. You can make ends meet. But if you do not have a clear foundation or stable position, everything can fall apart under pressure. Stability without legitimacy is fragile. Hard work alone is not enough. You can work 14 hours a day and still feel left behind. Effort without strategy leads to exhaustion. You need to understand the system you live in. You need to know where you stand and how to stand your ground. Preparation protects dignity. You prepare before things collapse. You fix what is weak while you still have time. You protect your future step by step. Real stability is built piece by piece. It does not come from one big moment. It grows through quiet consistency. And over time, that consistency earns respect. Have you ever wanted to quit after one failure? Have you ever felt that one mistake was enough to define you? If this story spoke to you, if you believe in standing your ground even when things fall apart, comment, rebuild, below. I would really like to read your thoughts. If you are learning English step by step through stories like this, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who may need a second chance today. This is Peak. We believe stories teach more than language. They teach how to rebuild. Stay Peak.